Okay, welcome everyone to my presentation regarding 2D animation research. So just a quick rundown on the animation process. These are kind of the topics I'm going to be covering. We have concept creation slash ideation. Then it goes on to script writing, storyboarding, animating, and editing, which we won't cover because we've been editing for a while in our courses. This presentation is focusing on narrative and character-based animations, so less structured avenues may need modified approach or not all of these steps. So concept ideation and creation includes an elevator pitch or short summary of the animation concept, and then lots of concept drawings, which include things like character design, set design, prop design, as well as color studies, which you can see beside my designs here. I just plot out all the colors that are associated with each design. And some characters, depending on if they change appearance during the animation, may need multiple iterations. As you can see, this one character has 3 different designs for my animation. Script writing. First thing to note is every one of the different style or approach. You can look up tons of tutorials and they'll all tell you a different way of how to do it. So it's really just something you kind of have to develop for yourself. Script should include dialogue as well as character actions, changes to the set, and any major camera angle changes. If there's multiple subjects in a scene, one thing that I recommend is addressing and they have like the same pronouns. One thing that I suggest is suggesting them with their name as opposed to their pronoun. For instance, if you have 2 female identified characters, if you say she for both of them, it can get kind of confusing. Another option would be to color code dialogue, which is what I did for my script. You can see an example of it over here. Yeah. And then from your script, you move on to storyboarding, which is where you take the script and make quick sketches of a few key poses per action or a piece of dialogue, generally 1 to 3 per action. They don't need to be pretty. In fact, on some of them, I spent arguably too much time. They're just meant to show direction of action, background motion, camera angle changes. As long as it's clear, like, which character is which, you're fine. You could do this by color coding characters, again, if you have like multiple pens or something like that. Often the margins of the page get used for notes or for dialogue, and arrows help notate direction, such as here I'm showing that the character is shaking his head back and forth. To learn more about going about through ideation to storyboarding, I highly suggest David Armsby's explanation videos. He was a big inspiration for me getting into animation to tell narrative, starting with his Autodale series, which went through the 2010s to 2021, and continuing with new series that he has that are still ongoing. His work proved it's possible to do a polished professional level as a single sole animator for over extended period. He shows great skills blending 2D hand-drawn animations as well as using 3D model rigs. And I just think his story writing has a lot of engaging twists. It's really easy to learn from his work because each of his animations, such as this one here, Immortal Machine, will come with at least one, if not multiple, process videos that are kind of like mini artist talks. In these, he goes over his approaches to concepts, themes, designs, world building, etc., from multiple angles, as well as discussing the struggles and failures that come with working solo on animations. So as you can see, just for this one video alone, he has 3 story building and explanation type videos. Even just one, you would get half an hour of content, but here you have an hour of content, which it's just great that he provides this resource to learn from. So, from that point, we go on to animation. And there's 2 main ways to approach hand-drawn animation. One way is called straight-ahead animation. It involves drawing one frame or cell after the next, so you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in sequence. What most professionals do is pose-to-pose animation, which involves drawing the key poses or frames and then drawing the in-betweens, which, depending on if you're doing squash and stretch kind of animations, they're sometimes called smear frames. Between these frames, you're more likely to have wonky proportions to close the gaps between the lines of the keyframes. But with how quick animation moves, the human brain will gloss over this. So for pose to pose, you start with your start and your end. So that's why 1 is on one end and 2 is on the opposite end. Then you do your middle, and then you do your in-betweens from there. And you can extend this out to have like 7, 9, etc. But generally, you're kind of working in odds with that system. Yeah. Here I've linked some resources for learning animation, including one that is directly from the McEwen Library, as well as another resource I found on YouTube that was helpful. So let's get into studio artists working with animation. First, we have Tahoma. They were born in Japan in 1975. Their drawings and video installations probe unsettling themes of isolation, contagion, and instability that lurk beneath the daily existence of contemporary Japan. She's inspired by various Japanese art forms and works with very surrealistic narratives. The art piece on the right I chose because it's talking about a disorder that she has in her hands and how she always feels like they're itchy. And as someone who's dealt with eczema my whole life, it is something that I very much relate to. And a quote from her that I pulled from the video is, "When I work, I take 50% of the responsibility. Of the responsibilities on the audience, then the work is complete." And I thought that's kind of a great way of establishing the relationship she wants the audience to have with her work. Another artist is Wang Ping. He was born in 1984 in Hong Kong and received his BFA from Curtin University in Perth, Australia. And in 2005, he started making animations under the name Wang Ping Animation Lab. His animations are very playful in nature, and he combines deadpan Cantonese with brightly colored animations. And he tends to cover topics that tend to be taboo among Chinese society and kind of make them more approachable, less taboo through his work. And then we have Amanda Boneto. She was born in 1990. She's a freelance animator, director, artist, and educator currently living in Los Angeles and New York. She's known for short films and commissioned pieces. A lot of her animations are for music videos, so this is a good kind of way of showing animation in an interdisciplinary form. She also works in surrealist animation. Apparently, I really got into surrealist animation while researching this. And yeah, she likes working with humor and observing the natural world. And this is a still from a music video that she was commissioned for by King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, which is an excellent band title. Here are all of my sources, including the ones that have been linked throughout the presentation, as well as credits to where I got this slide format from. Now here is a brief rundown of what we're going to go over in the Skillshare. We're going to start with an intro to the program, how to make a new document, setting your frames per second, and document pathways. We're going to talk about animation layers, then go on to some basic animation tools, and then how to export an MP4. As you can see, there's lots of kind of subheadings here. These are mostly to make sure that I stay on track, but also the things that I have in bold are really important if you're ever trying to animate in Tahoma yourself. So these are good to check back at if you're finding yourself getting lost. So, welcome to Tahoma 2D. Anytime you open up the software for the first time, you will see this little dialog box here. And this is where you set up your projects and your scenes. So your project is your overall animation. In this case, mine is titled, "Who Are You?" You can also choose to play in the sandbox if you're not working on a project in particular and just kind of screwing around with the program. And then your scenes here, this is where you have your scene 1, your scene 2, so keep a consistent naming convention is what I would suggest. You can also change your frame rate right here. You can also change it later, but it likes to fight you if you change it later, so I would suggest setting your frame rate right at top. Generally for indie or one-person animation, we're going to work with 12 frames per second. But industry standard for professional animation is 24. And that just says how many individual frames or cells, which are down here, you play for 1 second of animation. So you would have to have drawings for all of these guys and get to 12 for 1 second. That's what 12 FPS means. You can also have any of your previous scenes that you've worked on will show up on the sidebar here. Or if you have scenes saved somewhere else, you can open them through this as well. So I'm just going to open up the scene that I'm currently working on. So this is what your main workspace will look like. Now, I will say saving your work is a bit finicky. Before you start anything, I suggest going to your render panel and going to your output settings. And what you want to do is there is a default outputs folder. Sometimes it doesn't save in there when you try to save in there. I don't know why. So I would make a folder and designate it. And sometimes it doesn't like choosing one. So you're going to have to go to your file explorer, find the exact pathway and copy it and put it into the directory up here to get it to save where you want it to. So that's just a note on saving your scenes because it can be a little bit finicky, but I already have that set up. So I'm going to cancel and you can just quit this. So this is your workspace. Now animation layers. It's like Photoshop. Yay! So as you can see here along the bottom to the left, I have several layers here for my animation. These guys are all just different transparencies, which is why there's so many of them. If you want to change your transparency, the opacity for a layer is just in this little drop-down arrow. If you want to toggle a layer off, say I don't want to look at my storyboard, I shut it off like so. The eyeball makes it so you can't see it down here, but it doesn't actually make it not visible up here. I don't know why they did it that way, but you need the square to actually turn it off on your main scene. So yeah, so you have like your background, or in my case, I have my storyboard for now. And then you have like all your drawing layers above. And you could include color layers and all of that, and you can make as many as you want. And to make a new layer, you press this little add new level, and it will add it above whichever box you currently have selected. Each of these are called a cell or a frame. That is basically where your drawings go. If you want to select one cell, you obviously just click on it like so. If you want to select multiple, you click on the first one that you want to select. Then you hold down Shift and click, and it will highlight all of them in a purple. And then you got to be careful, because if you click anywhere else, it'll just unselect them. But if you want to move those cells, then you have to make sure that when you're clicking, that white border shows up and just around those cells, and then you can move them to other layers or over to different parts of your animation, etc. If you want to extend a cell, all you have to do is go to the end of your cell, or your selection of cells. You go to your end of your cell, and you just drag it, and that'll increase the duration that that cell will stay on screen, essentially. Yes, okay, check boxes. So if you're finding that this little scrubby thing is not working, what you do is you right-click everything, and you need to make sure that toggle implicit hold is off. if implicit hold is on, it will not allow you to change the duration of your cells. And I spent an hour trying to figure that out. So I'm trying to save you the future hassle. Um, you can also select cells and preset them to be on ones, twos, or threes. So that just means, will they stay on for, will a cell be stretched out to 3 or 2 or 1? I'm going to undo that because I actually wanted it 4. Anything past those, you have to kind of do it manually, which is unfortunate, but that's how it is. The next important thing when working in animation is something called onion skinning. So I'm going to go to a cell that's a little farther in. And onion skinning, you see this little red and green guy here. If I go to either side of these, you'll see these kind of little keyframe dots. And what you do is if you select on the red side, it'll show you the previous cell's drawing in red. If you go to the green side, and you have to make sure you're going to a new cell, which would be all the way over here, with this kind of keyframe dot. If you go there, bring your keyframe dot to the frame that follows, it will show you in green where your drawing for that frame is. So this is really important for doing the pose-to-pose animation. Because let's say that I was working in here and I didn't have this frame drawn. So I'm drawing this frame. It will show me both of them, so I can draw what the in-between drawing would be, which is why they're called in-between frames. So that's onion skins. Very important for animation, especially pose-to-pose. And you can turn them off, and you can toggle, you can show multiple previous frames by just going back further and further as well. And you just can select them and unselect them for whatever purposes you need to fill. Another thing that I want to mention while talking about layers is that if you see this little slider down here with the mountains that look smaller and bigger, this is how you zoom in and zoom out your timeline, kind of like in Premiere Pro or Adobe Audition. So you can zoom in or zoom out on any part of your timeline. The other thing is when you're trying to play back a section, you'll notice at the top of your timeline where your numbers are that you have these little playback start and end markers. So you can decide to replay your whole animation by stretching it all the way out to the end. Or if you're just trying to review a certain section, you can drag it out to the end of that section. So let's say I just want this first bit here, that's where I would drag it out to. And if you just want to play it once, then you hit this button, and then if you want to watch it multiple times over and over to make sure it's smooth, then you use your loop button. Yeah. So let's go into some very basic animation tools. First thing you have is your hand. That'll just allow you to drag your frame that you're working on around. Secondly, we have the brush tool, which comes with many built-in presets with Tahoma. In OpenTunes, which Tahoma is based off of, you won't get this. So Tahoma's really good because it has some extra user-friendly features, including a very important one, in which I'll get to later. So if you're trying to change your brush, you just go over to the roster page. You can also work in vectors. But there's tons of brushes in here, so you can get like really watercolory if you want to, things like that. And then to change your color, you have this hexagon here, and you have this little slider here, and this will kind of be your intensity, your brightness, and then obviously you have your color wheel. And then your brush, if you have a tablet, it will respond to pressure. You can decide the size of your brush up here. The maximum is 3. So usually you're working pretty small at like a point whatever. In this case, I've been drawing mostly in a 0.6. Um, there's an opacity thing here. I find that it doesn't really work, and if you want to turn pressure on or off, there's an option here. You have your selection tool, which is just a pointer for some reason. And if you go up here, you have options of rectangular, which is just your standard like that. You have freehand, which is your lasso tool, just like Photoshop. And then you have polyline, which is where you have the different points that you close. Though that one can be kind of finicky. The one thing that I will say about the selection tool is also you can change your rotation point if you're trying to rotate an object, which is also very useful for quick animation. And just like a transform tool, you drag around the edges, but you have to be really careful because unlike in Photoshop where you have a bit of leeway, if you go even slightly out, it'll just deselect it, unfortunately. You also are able to use your Command Z, your Command C, your Command V, just like any other program. And you're able to do that with either the drawing, so you can select this part of a drawing and, create a cell and then paste it, or you can paste entire cells if you're doing like a looping animation, so you don't have to redraw it, which is very useful. And then we also have a shape tool. There's different shapes. You can change the sizes of them, and up here you can change rectangle, circle, ellipse, etc. There's plenty to work with here. The other tool of note is your eraser is also very finicky. You can change the size and hardness of it, but it does not respond to pen pressure. Like I'm, pressing hard and pressing light here, and it's staying the same. So you can only affect the amount that you're erasing by changing its size, which is kind of annoying. The other tool that I will mention is if you're looking to eyedropper a color, like say I want the black, you want this one that has the 3 little RGB dots, not this regular one. The regular one doesn't do anything as far as I can tell. And then you just, you select your color, select the gray. There you go. Last but not least, exporting to MP4. So this is the main reason that Tahoma 2D is better than OpenTunes, other than the other user-friendly tools. And that is because in OpenTunes, there is no automatic way to render out to MP4 because of some sort of animation industry standard. But in Tahoma, it is built in. So what you do is you can just fast render to MP4. And then it'll do a countdown. It tells you how many frames you have. And it tells you where it is saving it to. Okay, last but not least, if you're trying to save your file while working on it, you're not planning on rendering right now, it looks a little funny, but this is how you save it. Just click Save All. I don't know why, because you generally don't have multiple scenes up at once, but that's just how you do it. There's no thing that just says save. It's just Save All. That is my Skillshare. Thank you for watching. I just wanted to add at the end here, Tahoma 2D can do so much more. There's ways to rig animation puppets in it, and ways to use vectors, ways to use scanned in drawings, and so much more. So, and there's tons of other tools. I think you can edit in there too. So please look up tutorials because there's so much more this software can do. I barely even scratched the surface. Now enjoy a couple bloopers. Uh-oh. Tahoma stopped responding. Yay! Oh no. Okay. Well, I'm glad I didn't need to save anything. Ugh. Oh, okay, we're fine. Oh, last but not least, If you are working in progress and you would like to save your file, oh, don't tell me that you crashed again. Okay, well, fucker.